I've always been a fan of big-name events, but never in my wildest dreams did I imagine scoring an invite to one of Diddy's legendary after-parties, especially a private yacht affair off the coast of Miami. Yet here I was, heart thumping as I boarded the tender boat that would shuttle me and a handful of other guests out to a gleaming white yacht anchored just offshore. The code was the same as always, dress in all white. I wore linen pants, a loose silk shirt, and sandals. Most guests around me were equally dressed. Breezy white dresses, crisp shirts, some with subtle gold jewelry. Everyone chatted excitedly, phones in hand, ready to capture the magic. As we approached the yacht, I marveled at its size. Multi-leveled, with warm lights casting reflections on the water. The party had started before we arrived, laughter and music drifting across the waves. A staff member in white attire helped me aboard, smiling politely. Inside, pure luxury. A DJ on the top deck played mellow R&B tracks, and servers drifted by with champagne and canapes. The mood was celebratory, sophisticated, and intimate, a world away from the crowded events on land. I didn't know anyone here personally. My invitation was a fluke from a friend who worked in entertainment PR. She said, "Just enjoy, keep a low profile, don't ask too many questions." I intended to do exactly that. I took a glass of champagne and wandered along the deck, admiring the skyline fading into night, the soft ocean breeze. About 20 minutes in, I noticed something odd. A pair of guests huddled near the stern, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. One was a tall man in a white blazer, the other a woman wearing a white cocktail dress who looked worried, eyes darting around. Their body language screamed tension. I tried not to stare, but the moment I passed, their conversation halted abruptly, and the man fixed me with a pointed look as if to say, "Move along." I did. Next, I descended to a lower deck lounge, quieter and more private. Here, a few small groups chatted softly. A bartender mixed cocktails at a white marble bar. I took a seat, planning to savor a drink and enjoy the ambience. Another guest, a younger guy in a white shirt and slacks, sat nearby scrolling through his phone. He glanced at me, then quickly looked away. As time passed, I felt a strange undercurrent. While everyone smiled and made small talk, there seemed to be a layer of guardedness. The yacht felt too perfect, every detail controlled. One guest mentioned rumors. Big deals get made here, alliances formed. Don't wander where you're not invited. He warned me with a tight grin. I laughed nervously, unsure if he was joking. At some point, I realized a new tension. The yacht, which initially drifted near the shoreline, was now farther out at sea. I leaned over the railing, Miami's lights now distant specks. The water stretched dark and silent. My stomach fluttered with unease. Being out here meant no easy escape. If something went wrong, who would help? I decided to find a staff member and ask if we'd be heading back soon. Approaching a waiter who arranged glasses on a tray, I asked casually, "We're sailing farther out?" He gave a polite, rehearsed smile, "Just a short cruise. Enjoy the ride." I pressed slightly, "When do we return?" His smile faded an inch. "Soon enough," he said, tone calm but dismissive. Another hint I was pushing boundaries. I headed below deck to explore more, maybe find a quiet spot. The staircase led to a corridor with a few closed doors. I heard muffled voices behind one door. Curiosity got the better of me. I leaned closer just to listen. Inside, heated whispers, something about footage and delete everything. My heart skipped. Suddenly, the door opened and I almost stumbled in. The tall man in the white blazer stood there, glaring. "Lost?" he asked, voice low. I stammered, "Sorry. Just looking for the restroom." He narrowed his eyes. "Restrooms upstairs," he said curtly, and shut the door in my face. I hurried back up, palms sweaty. They were hiding something, maybe a negotiation or someone they wanted to silence. I remembered the fearful look on that woman's face earlier. When I returned to the main deck, I noticed a distinct lack of one guest. the younger guy I saw in the lounge. He'd been there earlier, but now gone. No big deal, maybe he left. But wait, we were at sea. He couldn't leave without the tender. I scanned the crowd, unable to find him. That's when I spotted the worried woman from before, standing alone near the railing, looking out at the water. I approached her carefully. "Hi, are you okay?" I asked softly. She hesitated, then said in a quiet voice, "My friend was here earlier. He stepped away, never came back." My heart sank. "I noticed someone missing too," I said. Her eyes met mine, and I saw fear mirrored there. We quickly compared notes, speaking in coded whispers. The younger guy I saw and her friend might be the same person, or different victims of something happening aboard. She mentioned her friend was a blogger known for exposing industry secrets. He bragged about filming something controversial at a previous event. Could that have put a target on him tonight? We decided to find help. Approaching a guard near the stairwell, I said we couldn't locate a guest who we knew boarded with us. The guard gave a bland smile. He might be inside resting. The sea makes some guests ill. When we insisted something felt wrong, the guard's smile faded. "Please enjoy the party. Don't cause a disturbance." Frustration and fear built. The staff and certain guests were complicit in something sinister. The yacht's isolation amplified the danger. Whispering with the woman, we hatched a plan. Cause a minor scene to draw attention from others, celebrities, influencers, maybe forcing the perpetrators to back off. If we shouted that someone was missing, would others rally? But we had to be careful. The guests might be too self-absorbed or intimidated to help. Still, waiting passively felt like surrender. Before we could act, the tall man in the blazer reappeared, flanked by two staffers. He approached us, voice dripping with feigned politeness. "Is there a problem?" I forced a smile, just worried about a friend who disappeared. He nodded sympathetically. "We'll check the cabins." "I'm sure he's fine." His tone sent chills down my spine. He was lying easily, smoothly. I realized confrontation might end badly. The woman beside me trembled. I whispered to her, "We must find the tender boat and see if we can leave." She agreed with a quick nod. We slipped away while the man was distracted by another guest asking questions. On the lower aft deck, where we first boarded, we found the tender that brought us. It was still tied up. No crewman was there, though. Could we operate it ourselves? Neither of us had that skill. As we stood there, the yacht's engine hummed, and I felt a subtle change in motion. They might be heading back soon. But would we reach shore safely, or would they dispose of anyone who knew too much? My mind raced with grim scenarios. We heard footsteps. Ducking behind a storage box, we watched two staffers walk by, whispering, "We need to secure him below until we dock." He filmed something he shouldn't. My pulse pounded. They had the missing guest captive somewhere on board, and we were next if we pushed too hard. The woman grabbed my arm, eyes pleading. "We have to escape." We decided to feign innocence. We returned upstairs, forced ourselves to smile and chat with a random group of guests. The facade of laughter and mild flirting. Underneath, terror. Eventually, we noticed the yacht changing direction. The shore lights grew brighter. Relief. Maybe once we dock, we can alert authorities on land. As we neared shore, the staff moved briskly, preparing for disembarkation. I still hadn't seen the missing guest. The tall man watched us from afar, expression stern. I avoided eye contact, playing the role of a clueless partygoer who enjoyed the night and suspected nothing. The woman did the same. When the tender was lowered, guests began leaving in small groups. We waited, not wanting to leave too soon or too late. Finally, we joined a group heading for the tender, blending into their cheerful chatter. Upon reaching the marina, I breathed fresh night air with relief. We stepped off the tender and onto the dock. The tall man lingered behind us, speaking softly to a staff member. We moved quickly, hurrying along the marina's path toward the main road. Once out of sight of the yacht's crew, the woman exhaled. "We made it, but what of the captive guest?" Guilt gnawed at me. Could we do anything now that we were ashore? We agreed to find a payphone. Our phones felt compromised, suspicious, or at least a secure place to call the police. We ended up at a small late-night cafe near the waterfront. Inside, the hum of normal life reassured us. We told the cafe's hostess we had an emergency and needed to call authorities. Soon, police arrived, and we reported everything. Suspicious behavior, a missing guest, possible captivity on board. The police took notes but seemed skeptical. No official complaint of a missing person yet. Without names and proof, it's tricky, the officer said. We tried describing the guest, but we never got his name. The woman only knew him casually. In the end, we could do little but trust that police would at least check. We parted ways at a taxi stand. Before leaving, the woman thanked me, tears in her eyes. We escaped because we stuck together, she said. I nodded, mind racing. The night's glamour had soured into fear and helplessness. Back at my motel, I tried to sleep, replaying the night's events. The soft music, the perfect white attire, the quiet threats. The guest who vanished might never be confirmed missing. Perhaps they'd release him later, or maybe he'd be too scared to talk. I'd witnessed how power and influence can shroud wrongdoing in silence. I share this story now to remind others. Behind the glamour, exclusivity, and style, dark intentions can hide. That night on the yacht, I learned that not all luxury is harmless, and not all laughter is sincere. The white clothes and pretty smiles masked secrets that no one dared acknowledge openly. And we, mere accidental witnesses, were lucky to escape with only fear, not harm. I still love the idea of exclusive parties, but now I understand there's always a hidden cost. After that night, I vowed never to attend such high-profile events alone or unprepared. Safety, trust, and honesty are scarce commodities in places where appearances mean everything. In truth is just another commodity to be hidden at sea. I never thought I'd see the inside of a private recording studio linked to someone as influential as Diddy. Yet here I was, stepping through a heavy soundproof door into a sleek, all-white lounge. The invitation came through a friend of a friend, a small-time producer who said this was a listening session for some upcoming tracks. No big party this time, but a select few invitees all wearing white. It was Diddy's signature aesthetic, apparently extended to these hush-hush gatherings. I wore white jeans, a white crewneck sweater, and spotless sneakers, hoping to blend in. The studio was somewhere in the Hollywood Hills, tucked away behind tall hedges and a gated driveway. Outside, the night air was cool and quiet, no paparazzi in sight. Inside, soft ambient lighting made the place feel warm yet clinical. About 10 people milled around, a mix of producers, a few artists, and a couple of industry insiders I recognized from magazines. Everyone sipped sparkling water or champagne in delicate glasses. The hush in the room suggested something special was about to happen, but no one volunteered details. I was here alone. My producer contact had said he'd meet me inside but was running late. Without him, I felt like an intruder. I picked up a flute of champagne from a bar in the corner. The bartender nodded politely, dressed in all white, of course. The music playing softly overhead was instrumental, building atmosphere but not stealing focus. Every so often, the big double doors to the main studio room would open, a staff member gliding in or out with some equipment. A woman in a fitted white jumpsuit approached me, smiling politely. "First time here?" she asked. Her tone was warm but measured. I admitted yes, and she said, "Just enjoy. Don't ask too many questions. When the main session starts, you'll understand why we keep it private." That phrasing, "don't ask too many questions," sparked a nervous flutter in my stomach. But I nodded, feigning casual acceptance. The minutes passed slowly. A few guests whispered together, occasionally glancing at a closed door on the far side. That must be the main studio room. I overheard one snippet of conversation. "He's going to show us something no one else has heard. Total secrecy. If anyone records it, they're done." Another person nodded solemnly. I decided to poke around discreetly. I moved toward a hallway lined with platinum records. At the end was a locked door with a keypad. As I turned back, I nearly bumped into a tall man wearing a white blazer and slacks. He gave me a cool look, blocking my path. "The session is the other way," he said, not hostile but firm. "Stick to the lounge." I raised my hands apologetically, stepping back. Clearly, exploring uninvited areas wasn't allowed. Back in the lounge, I found a seat on a white leather sofa. My phone buzzed. My producer friend, stuck in traffic, might not make it. "Sorry." "Great." I was on my own completely. I tried to relax, sipping champagne slowly. The guests smiled politely if our eyes met, but no one seemed eager to chat with a newcomer. Then, a soft chime sounded, and a staff member announced, "We'll begin shortly. Please, no phones, no recordings. Respect the privacy of this session." Everyone nodded knowingly. I tucked my phone into my pocket, resolved to follow the rules. Two staffers opened the big doors to the main studio room and gestured for us to enter. Inside, it was even more immaculate. A large console, towering speakers, and a few comfortable chairs arranged in a semicircle. Diddy wasn't present, but I knew he didn't always show up personally to these things. Perhaps he was in a back room or might appear later. The mood inside was tense, expectant. We took seats. I ended up near the back, which suited me fine. One staff member, also dressed in white, stood by the console. He said, "We'll listen to a few rough tracks tonight. Some are very sensitive early material. Understand, we want absolute discretion." Everyone murmured agreement. As the first track played, it was indeed something special. A rough R&B infused hip-hop track with a distinctive beat that I hadn't heard before. The quality was raw but full of potential. People nodded in appreciation, but no one gushed openly. They were too cautious, it seemed. Halfway through the second track, I noticed movement behind a tinted glass window on the far side of the room. A small window, maybe leading to another booth. A silhouette stood there, watching us. I squinted, curious. The figure remained still. Could it be Diddy observing incognito, or someone else evaluating our reactions? The third track played. The atmosphere felt heavier now. I could sense some guests growing uneasy. The woman who had warned me earlier caught my eye, her lips pressed thin. I followed her gaze. She was looking toward that tinted window as well. After the track ended, one guest, a middle-aged man in a white turtleneck, cleared his throat and complimented the production. The staffer nodded, unresponsive to the tension. Suddenly, the tall man from before entered the room quietly. He leaned down and whispered something into the staffer's ear. The staffer stiffened, paused, then turned off the music. Silence fell. Everyone looked around, puzzled. "Sorry, there's a small technical delay," the staffer said, forcing a smile. "Please wait here." He stepped out with the tall man. The door closed, leaving us alone, no staff present. We glanced at each other, confused. Without guidance, some guests muttered softly, "What's going on? Did something happen?" I caught the woman's eye again, and she motioned subtly for me to stay calm. Minutes passed. Outside, muffled voices argued. I leaned closer to the door, but another guest shook his head, warning me not to interfere. The tension rose. Eventually, the door opened, and only the tall man returned. He looked displeased. "Apologies," he said, "but we must end the session early. Please return to the lounge." No explanation given. We filed out quietly, sensing something had gone wrong behind the scenes. Back in the lounge, the atmosphere had soured. People mumbled questions, but the staff were absent, leaving us to speculate. One guest tried the main exit, but it was locked. Unusual for an event like this. Panic flickered in some eyes. I approached the woman who had warned me earlier. "Something's off," I said. She nodded. "I know. One of the guests, I think he recorded something. They might be searching us now." My heart sank. Confiscating phones? We had no choice but to comply if confronted. Just then, two staffers entered, faces stern. They asked everyone to remain calm, announcing a technical issue with security measures. They claimed no one could leave until the matter was resolved. The guests protested softly, but the staffers insisted this was necessary. We were effectively locked in. The woman leaned in and whispered to me, "They're paranoid about leaks." If someone recorded those unreleased tracks or a private conversation, they'll do anything to keep it secret. My throat tightened. What anything meant in this secretive world. We sat tensely for what felt like an hour. Some guests paced, others sipped water quietly. The staffers occasionally murmured into earpieces, ignoring our questions. Finally, the tall man reappeared. He asked each of us, one by one, to show our phones, unlock them, and prove we had no recordings. This was an invasion of privacy, but what could we do? Protest and possibly face worse consequences? I dreaded my turn. I had followed rules, no recordings. But what if they didn't believe me? The line moved slowly. A trembling guest in front of me hesitated, refused to unlock his phone. The tall man's voice turned cold. We must ensure no unauthorized material leaves this room. The guest looked around for support, found none. Under pressure, he unlocked his phone. The staffer scrolled through his files, nodded, let him go. My turn came, hands sweating. I unlocked my phone. The man scrolled, satisfied nothing suspicious was saved. He nodded curtly, you're free. Relieved, I stepped aside. Others followed suit. Some argued about rights, but the staff insisted. One artist threatened to call her lawyer. She got a stern, not now. I noticed another absence. The woman who warned me and left earlier was missing. Or was she in another part of the building? I scanned the room. She was gone. Had they separated her for some reason? As soon as the checks ended, the staffers relented, unlocking the exit. We were told curtly, you may leave now. We apologize for any inconvenience. The tone was forced politeness masking anger or fear. Everyone rushed out, eager to escape this tense environment. Outside in the cool Hollywood night, I spotted a few guests whispering to each other, shaken. A couple of them left immediately in their cars. I lingered near the driveway, scanning for the woman. No sign of her. Should I ask a staffer? No, that could put me at risk. Maybe she left through another exit or refused the check and got detained longer. Fear gnawed at me. What if she discovered something they wouldn't allow her to share? Without a friend or ally, I hailed a rideshare and left quietly, heart pounding. The driver asked if I had a nice night, and I struggled to find words. I mumbled something about a strange event, leaving it vague. Back at my apartment, safe but rattled, I replayed the evening in my mind. The pristine all-white dress code, the elegant studio, and the smiles all concealed a ruthless demand for secrecy and control. In a world where one slip could ruin careers or reveal hidden deals, they'd go to disturbing lengths. Locking us in, searching our phones, intimidating us. I still wonder what happened to that woman or the guest who might have recorded something. Did they get out unharmed? I found nothing in the news. Silence. The industry's well-oiled PR machine at work, no doubt. That night taught me a harsh lesson. Sometimes the allure of secretive, high-profile gatherings hides darker truths. Fame and power breed paranoia, and those who witness too much risk becoming collateral damage. I'll never attend such an event again. I'd rather remain on the outside than step into a world where trust is non-existent, and silence is enforced at any cost. In the end, I emerged physically unharmed but mentally shaken. The memory lingers. The locked doors, the forced phone checks, the tension in that studio room. All white attire may symbolize purity and luxury, but that night, it felt like a uniform demanded by those who control the narrative. I'm just glad I left with only fear, not something worse.